But you know what we're celebrating this year as well? As you know, last time we had Davy Jones of the Monkees. Today we have probably one of the most underrated members of the Monkees. This man can play anything. Guitar, wind instrument, organ, piano, you name it. Ladies and gentlemen, get your hands together for Mr. Peter Tork.
Thank you both. Okay, the script is you first. So, okay, thank you.
Hi, Peter.
Peter, how's your band going? How's your band going?
How's my band doing?
Yeah.
Well, you'll get a chance to tell. You'll find out. You'll come here tomorrow night, and will it be here by any chance? Do we know? It will be here. No, maybe we'll get a different stage. But it will be on this stage, apparently, or one very similar and similarly placed. And my band will be performing tomorrow night. The band is now officially called Peter Tork and Shoe Suede Blues. They overrode my veto. It was used to be just Shoe Suede Blues, and they said, no, you gotta put your name on it, because I don't know why they think it's going to sell another CD or two, which is fine with me if it does, but I'm also thinking everybody's going to go, oh yeah, that ex-guy who used to be a... So, I know you're just dying of curiosity, like what's my cat's name, and those kinds of things, so ask away. Raise a hand, drop your dignity. I knew it. I was waiting for some smart person, some smart donkey. Yeah.
Peter, what's your dog's name?
Oh man, no, that's serious stuff. I don't have a dog, and my cat isn't even my cat. Or it wasn't my cat until my mom passed away. Now it's my cat. And the cat's name is Thumbs, short for Thumbelina, because she's one of those 6-toed or 7-toed cats. And she puts her hands on a box that looks like she's grabbing it, her paws. So, okay, thanks very much. See you all later. Hit it, for God's sake. Save me from embarrassment here.
How has your life changed as music has changed?
How's my life changed as music has changed? Hardly at all. I mean, I'm old. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and as a matter of fact, I don't think music has changed. They still got the heavy metal guys, they still got the folkies with the rock backgrounds, you know, I mean, all the acoustic singer-songwriters are putting out records exactly the same. It's like they're putting out the records with the guitars and somebody's playing like bass and drums behind them on the record, and those people don't go on the road, and the person's playing just guitar, you go to see them, it's just them and their guitar. And that hasn't changed since Simon and Garfunkel. The first Simon and Garfunkel in 1832. Not the more recently arrived imitators. And you know, there's poetry and there's funny things going on. Basically, the only thing I've noticed is the sound quality has gotten better, and that some of the singer-songwriters are a little bit more free-floating. I mean, there's more room for free-floating poetry and for some kind of quirky insights, this quirky self-examination. We couldn't get into anything too quirky in my day because the things, you know, lots because the attitude was a little bit tighter, but basically it doesn't seem to be has changed much. It's an awful lot of fun having computers. The technology has changed enormously. The new CD, which, hark, did I hear somebody mention the new CD? The new CD, which should be out in a month. I think we might be done. We're going to hear a mix tonight or tomorrow. We're going to find out whether it's the final mix or not, depending on whether anybody falls down on the floor retching or just stands there with a wan smile on his face. If everybody's got a wan smile on his face, that means everybody has about the same amount of objections and it goes. Somebody goes, oh, really? Then we have to do something again. And so we have artwork to finish up and packaging, and then we'll be done. It should be. Might be less than a month. We don't, well, and then manufacturing, so a month, let's say. Just in time for Christmas. You didn't see that coming, right? And what was the question?
What's your cat's name?
Oh, and another thing, audiences have gotten funnier. So there's the technology. We recorded the basic tracks in a full-fledged studio onto computer, and then took the hard disk away from us, the entire CD. 16 tracks, any number of tracks, 16 to 30 tracks per tune, all in this much space. It's really amazing what you can do. And when they get down to moving, just molecules and photons around, then you're going to put an entire recording, the entire, all the world's music of all time will fit into a box like this. They won't know what to do with the next one. And so we took the hard drive home, and I dumped it onto my computer, and Richard, the guitar player, dumped it onto his. And we worked and we created things and we sent each other ideas through the internet. And because we both had all the sound files, we could send arrangements for only 500 or 600K. Is all the song is, the hard stuff, the big bandwidth is on the audio. So send the arrangements and the songs very very quickly back and forth. How about this? How about this? It's almost as though we were in the studio together. We did stop in on each other, and of course Richard is on his way here, probably in the air as we speak. And he will of course be here tomorrow playing guitar, probably about there. No, there, because Arnold is going to be here, John will be here, and I'll be over there. He had a funny thought in the elevator coming down, reminded that there's Arnold Jacks playing bass and John Palmer playing drums. And how many times don't you think I've said Arnold Palmer? Just by accident. And I don't even know I've made the mistake until both of them look at me. Oh yeah, John Jacks on the other instrument. It was just as bad. We had a bass player for a while named Michael Sunday and Richard Michaels. Don't you think that one was nuts too? What's one thing that happens as you get older, you don't care quite so much about being rigorously correct. Well, you do, but you're not. Rigid about saying the right thing at the right time, and now things are, hey, almost as if I've been drinking. Which, thank you very much. I haven't hidden for this while. Hello.
And you had mentioned earlier that years ago Jim Morrison had been over at your house, and he was kind of difficult. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on that.
You want me to delineate how badly Jim Morrison behaved at my house?
Yeah.
That's the expansion, the only expansion available. Jim Morrison was, to my understanding, an alcoholic. It's hard to imagine that such a thing could happen in the 60s. But don't do that shuffle thing, just stand up straight and come on. Davey used to call it the roadie shuffle, the guys come on. Don't duck, you guys are prettier than we are. Stand up straight. And he was notorious in Hollywood. I mean, sober, he was that fabulous performer that you've seen on your shindig kinescopes and so on. But turn him loose with a bottle, and really, he was leering and abusive and snarling and sexist and hitting on anything, on anybody, at least female, as far as I've ever been able to observe. And it was like, could somebody please get this guy out of here? I mean, it was bad enough. The rest of us were bad enough, but he was pretty bad. So, thanks for asking.
Have you been treated fairly by the residuals for the Monkees' music?
I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to instigate an audit pretty soon, but that doesn't mean anything. You just automatically do that because there's always a little money there, because they're just automatically going to use the most favorable interpretation of the rules for themselves, and you go in there and you say, well, these are not only not favorable, but they're probably illegal, and we can give you a whole lot of flack, and they come to a fig and they give us the money and we go on our way. That's just the way it's done. Everybody does that, if you have any sense. It's just normal. So with that in mind, yeah, as far as I know, it's all been on the up and up. We haven't discovered them lying to us outright or trying to stash money in the Cayman Islands or anything. Eventually, you know, you go at them and they cough up a little bit of money, and they're probably still gypping you a bit, but what the heck? That's just the way it goes. You live with that. Denise.
Yeah, I noticed on your website that you're going to be going on a UK tour with the band after Christmas. And then I also noticed that it said after that world tour, and I was just wondering, are you going to go around the world with them too?
Okay, for those of you who didn't hear, the question was, we are going to the UK in February, and there was some indication on the website that there was going to be a world tour, and the proposition is that we're going to get as far as Holland, and that probably counts as between those two countries. Maybe Germany, maybe Afghanistan. Actually, Afghanistan is in the cards. It's not absolutely. And Sweden for sure. Sweden for sure. I just stand here, a dog. And so by world tour, we certainly don't mean all the countries in the world, or that we're going to come back from a different direction than the one we left. Although that brings up a kind of an interesting story to my mind. You guys will be bored silly, but I'm. And so we'll be going pretty far afield. It looks like Afghanistan to actually go entertain the troops, and which will put us pretty far afield. So yeah, world tour. Okay, here's the weird story. Jonesy and I, before the Monkees reunion of '86, Jonesy and I had a chance to go to Australia. I went to England to rehearse with him and the band that we got there together. And we went on to the east to go to Australia. Now, Australia is closer to, I mean, if you're in England, Australia is closer to the east. If you're in New York, Australia is closer to the west. That is to say, if you're in Australia and you want to go to New York, it's easier to come from the west to New York. But we couldn't do that because our tickets were round trip in both directions. We couldn't get a round the world ticket. So the day we were done with Australia in Adelaide, we kept track of this, my flying partner and I. It was 54 hours door to door, from the door of the hotel in Adelaide, to the plane to Sydney, to the plane to, and it's 3 6-hour legs from Sydney to London, and then flying from London to New York after that, and then getting from New York to the airport to the apartment door. It was pretty rough. So like 54 hours, that was really astounding because they wouldn't let us go the other way. I'm sorry, your tickets aren't right. That sort of thing. So, okay. I told you you'd be bored. What? Hi!
I'm a guitar player, and I always notice when you play guitars, okay? I always notice when you play guitars on the Monkees, use direct instruments. I was wondering, what's your favorite guitar, and why do you like playing it so much? Or do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite guitar? The man noticing that I played Gretches on the screen. Well, we played Gretches on the screen because we had a deal with Gretsch. Did anybody happen to mention that it was a commercial enterprise we were involved in at the time? I know this will come as a shock to the idealists among you. Oh, the Monkees were so flippin' pure. I do not have a single favorite guitar of my own. I have an imitation Fender Strat with a big new neck by Warmoth that just feels like a baseball bat, and it just has got wonderful sustain. And we've recently entered into an arrangement with Peavey, who are making a very good guitar and some amps. And we're really over the moon about having a deal for Fender amps. And they're not giving them to us for free, but the rate they're giving them to us is really, shockingly low. And I think we'll be playing them tomorrow night. I know I have, they're at my house, so we should be able to bring them out here. Okay. And what I like to do depends on what I'm doing. I'm going to be doing a show here later this evening as a single stand-up acoustic, and I have brought my guitar, my acoustic guitar, that I bought in 1967. I had a guitar stolen and was in Nashville at the time and was a fan of what was then being called the F-30 by Guild, and I went to a music store in Nashville, and they had two of them, and I took away the one that I liked better, paid $175 for it. And when you get a guitar that sounds as good as that, you've paid $3,500 for it today, I think, at least. And that is about the best acoustic guitar I've ever played in my life, and it's mine. And that's my acoustic guitar. As far as electric guitars go, I'm still shifting around. I prefer a Strat generally, just for the sound of it these days. I just decided that Strats are where it's at. Just crossed my mind. And what the guitar that Peavey gave me just now is called an Omniac, and it is a Tele, not a Telecaster per se, but an imitation Tele, with 5 positions, one of which imitates a Strat sound, and so I might be playing that tomorrow night. We'll see. It's a matter of changing the strings and all that stuff. There are so many questions here that I'm feeling obliged to answer each one at excruciating length. So somebody else can go with me.
How was your lunch today at Champions? I got to see you salad.
I got to watch you eat every mouthful, right? Chomp, chomp, chomp. Well, it was pretty good, mostly because Wisconsin is beating Iowa last I saw, and I got Wisconsin roots, so I'm rooting for the Badgers at every juncture. It's about the only college team I care a fig about. And they're ranked all of number 16. They're not going to play for the national championship this year. The BCC is not in their cards, but they were holding off Iowa by 3 points with 2:45 left when there was a knock on the door said. So I don't know how that's going to go. Iowa had the ball and were marching. Oh God! And Wisconsin defense isn't looking too good. So okay, that's enough of that. Hang on a second. Yes, way loud so I can hear you, and then I won't have to repeat it too.
If you had more of an influence on like one of these earlier music for 12, do you think it would sound different?
Yeah. By definition.
But I mean, like, do you think?
Sorry?
To influence things. Do you think it would have more bluesy? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely bluesier. There was some discussion with Steve Stills to be the producer. And can't you imagine what that would have been like? It would have been, Buffalo Springfield East. It would have been, it would have sounded very much like Buffalo Springfield, I'm sure, which is remotely not a bad thing. Steve Stills is one of the better pop creators of all time. I mean, you think Buffalo Springfield and CSN, and sometimes Y. And who else has been in 2 groups except for the other 2 guys in CSNY? Nash and Crosby were also in major groups before that, and I don't know who else has ever been. McCartney and Wings, I suppose but Eric Clapton, yeah. So are you talking about Eric Clapton league with Steve Stills? Because I think you are. So you see, we're talking about a mighty, mighty force in pop music. And it didn't happen, having to do with reasons of my inability to stick to my own guns, which is something I'm working on. But yeah, it would have been bluesier, it would have been more like Buffalo Springfield. It would have been heavier, more heavier metal, not like real metal, but with good distortion in the guitars and not plinky, plinky, plink, which really was produced and designed in order not to scare your mother. And in which endeavor we succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. We put mothers to sleep all over the nation while their kids listened to us play this silly bubblegum stuff, and nobody felt threatened. Yes.
You enjoyed the movie Ed.
Did I? No. Not much. Sometimes. I was working for Bob Rafelson, who is awful. He's a bad guy to work for. I don't know if you remember the scene where Ray Nitschke, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, just after he retired, and I did a scene. I drop into a foxhole and he hits me, and bam, bam, bam. And there's a camera on my face and I'm going, and I'm letting what actual natural fear I have right out there. I'm doing my job, and Bob Rafelson says, "Oh, look how scared you are." I mean, the man was wildly, militantly insensitive. He thought he was going to go to hell if he paid attention to anybody else's feelings. So, now he's in hell. That's life. As far as the movie goes, in general, I think it's a pretty good movie. But again, it's Bob Rafelson's movie. It's the way Bob Rafelson saw the phenomenon of the monkeys, and some of the things that he saw, I saw, and some of the things that he saw, I didn't see. And so it's really, it's all psychedelic and stuff, but and it's an interesting take on the monkeys phenomenon. But I'm not sure that at the end of it says anything. It's just, Bob Rafelson's theory of movie making is you're messed up, and if you think you aren't, then you're even stupider than you look. And that's just basically his basic movie. Life sucks, and then you're humiliated and disgraced, and I laugh at you. It's Bob Rafelson's school of movie making. And ultimately, there isn't much room in there for character development. I mean, all the Rafelson movies I saw, people died gratuitously after doing not much one way or another. And that doesn't sound like, like a stirring message to me. I kind of prefer to think that you grow up and that you get better and that you pass it on to your children who then transcend you. That's what I think. I don't know how you make a movie like that, but I think that anything that says that, nothing happens and then you die, it's like not much fun to watch. You walk out of that movie going, so what's the point? Do I cut my throat an hour later? I don't want you cutting your throat. Because as you listen, you know this about everybody but yourselves. There is nobody who doesn't deserve to live long enough to come to, except maybe yourselves. But that's because you don't know that you're the same as everybody else. Nobody doesn't deserve to live long enough to come to wake up and go, oh, wait a minute, there's more to life than just, money, property, and prestige. And you wouldn't deny that to anybody. Your worst enemy might wake up tomorrow. You wouldn't kill him today to deprive him of that chance. I hope. I mean, some of you of course don't. But in general, I know that most of you are not thinking along those lines in terms of your most despised enemy. You'd like them out of your hair, and you wish you weren't working for them in the office or two, or something, what have you. But you would not deny anybody the chance to get it together. And Rafelson basically says, no, you don't get that. You're a fool to think about those kinds of things. And I know for a fact, from my own experience, that is available to anybody. Not everybody will take advantage of it, but it's available to anybody. So don't quit just before the miracle. You never could tell. You might come to yourselves.
and Jim Morrison hung out?
No, we didn't hang out. He just came to my house and made a fool of himself, and then he left. It's the last I saw of him.
Oh, you just weren't that good of friends?
Not a bit, no. No, he just came to my house and...
I met Ray Lee and Everett and a signing he did in Marlboro.
Oh.
But you're more exciting.
Sorry?
Wisconsin beat Iowa.
What's your question? Oh, the 3 points, yeah, good. They didn't, so Iowa didn't score, but they scored, they'd have taken the game. In the back.
I watched your bio movie, The Monkeys, on VH1. There's a scene
Daydream Believers?
Yeah.
With,
you
what?
guys get into a big food fight, and I'm wondering if that's really accurate, and I also want to know...
Yeah, well, he hit me first.
Who's your favorite musician?
My favorite musician? Myself. You joking? No, not nearly, folks. I mean, you know, I kind of like what I do, but let's get real here, you know. Muddy Waters. Ray Charles. You know, we're talking, let's talk about the guys who really, you know, have it big time. All of those blues giants, the King brothers, B.B., Albert, and Freddie, all of them fabulous. Just, you know, there was a, let me tell you about the blues, folks. There was a guy, worked in a small club in Santa Monica. Every Monday night he and his band led the jam. And they played for 2 hours, and then the white boys got up. When I walked in there, they would start to play, and my soul would just, okay, everything's all right. There's this quality of God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. And sometimes when I play the blues, that happens. Not as often as much as these guys, because they were, you know. But most people think, you'll mention the blues to them and they'll say, oh, they're so depressing. Never having really experienced it. You cannot say that if you've really experienced the blues. Because the blues, well, the rough times, those are what Alfred Hitchcock called the MacGuffin. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term, but in Alfred Hitchcock movies, there's a string of pearls or a state secret or, you know, a microfilm of some kind or other. Everybody in the movie is excited about that. But in fact, the movie is not about that at all. That's just the thing that everybody in the movie gets excited about. It's called the MacGuffin. And in a sense, the hard times, the real sad stuff in the blues is just the MacGuffin. You listen to the blues not because you want to be reminded of what hard times are, but because you want to know that everybody's had hard times and you're not alone. That's the difference. Disco music, bam, bam. Hi, how are you? What's your sign? What? Not much, you know, community there. Not much sense of belonging. It's like everybody's out. I was at a Playboy club one time performing, and I used to see these sailors looking at the bunnies. Now, I went with a woman who I later saw in a bunny costume, so I know what those costumes do. They start with melons as inserts, and then everything else is, well, so it's, you know, so you're looking at it, and you know, it's all fake, and plus you don't get to touch them. So, you know, there's this quality of, anyway, what was the question? The others? Let's, oh, good, thank you. Stand up so we can hear.
Speaking of Playboy, will you be removing any articles of clothing this afternoon?
No, I will not be selling any articles of clothing. I neglected to.
It's charity.
Okay, no, I'm too squeamish for that, I guess, yeah. Sorry, louder?
Favorite monkey episode?
My favorite monkey episode is the fairy tale episode. The one with the cardboard. The sound lady is here. There's a microphone in here. And I bang this and go, boom, 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 in your ears. My favorite monkey episode is the fairy tale episode because it's all tongue-in-cheek and the cardboard costumes and Mike Nesmith as the princess is flippin' divine. He should have gotten an Emmy for that as the best supporting character in an episode. I mean, I didn't think of it until years later, but he was just astoundingly good in it. You're gonna get me out of the mud! So that one is my favorite. My favorite moment on a Monkeys episode is Ryu Shia that we sang on the Christmas episode. Yeah? Monkeys episodes are on DVD. Rhino Records and tapes and CDs and DVDs has them. And you can get them for a substantial contribution to me. And they will ship them to you. I don't think they're in the stores anymore. Actually, here's how it went down. I heard that. Yeah. Not that I pay attention. I steal all my own music. Actually, I suppose, I don't know if you know, but there are 3 full-length high-res MP3s from our last CD are up on the petertork.com. You can track the links to MP3 page. And there's 3 nice, big, long songs, and we're going to put up a whole bunch more soon. We might even put up 1 or 2 from the new CD before they're made public overall, before the CD comes out. And so check in with those. And meanwhile, of course, after tomorrow night, the band and I will be playing next Saturday at the Sit and Bull Club in Maynard, Massachusetts. Thanks to those of you who come from there. And you should come to that. It's a restaurant you can bring your kids. So, and rock and roll all night long. Okay, yes?
I was always under the impression you had folk musical roots. Is that true?
Folk music roots, yeah. Well, insofar, I don't know what you mean by roots exactly. I never did live in the Appalachians learning banjo tunes at the feet of the masters. But I did, when I was in, I think, grammar school or junior high, rock and roll hit in the first place with the Little Richard and Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Fats Domino, Buddy Holly. The first wave of rock and roll came along, and it was kind of interesting, and I was kind of intrigued. But then rock pop music became very, very feeble. Next thing I knew, it was Patty Page singing, "How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the raggedy tail." Okay, and meanwhile, folk music was coming along, and people Pete Seeger, who had in fact explored the Appalachians and the world of folk music, had become more and more common. In the early 50s, before rock and roll, there was a group called the Weavers who had 2 top 10 hits. One was called Goodnight Irene, and the other was called Tsena Tsena. And both of these were top 10 hits, and they were very folky with a little bit of orchestration. And these guys, the Weavers, got dumped by their record company because, by God, they believed in things like people's rights and equality and no unfair advantage to factory owners and financiers. And this was, of course, radically difficult for those people who were in control of the reins of power in this government, unlike the current day. And they were blackballed for being lefties in this McCarthy era. And then in 1955, they got back together again as a much more purist kind of folk music thing. And my parents bought, being lefties themselves, bought the record of the Weavers Reunion at Carnegie Hall album. And it was so much more interesting than what was going on in pop music at that point. And so that became the stuff that we listened to. And I learned how to play banjo by reading Pete Seeger's book, How to Play the Five-String Banjo. And so on. And yeah, it was folk music was what it was when we were, so in the early 60s, just as the Beatles were beginning to emerge, we were still playing folk music in the coffee houses in Greenwich Village. And so yeah, I'm a folkie by trade, and switching over from folk to rock and blues has been a wonderful journey. I've enjoyed every inch of it. Along with the folk music stuff, the blues was like cooking along underneath there. And as for myself, I knew I could play this folk music stuff. I didn't know whether I could play the blues or not. It took me a while to get my sea legs, as it were, to get my feet under me in the blues. Now I won't have much to do with anything else. I mean, some. I'll do some acoustic music tonight. You hear all my old folk songs on there. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Pete Seeger, there's some Monkees CD has a song by you, banjo track called Seeger's Theme, and I was always wondering, is that it's like a tribute to Pete? And if it is, how the heck did you ever get them to let you get past the censorship of the Black Hole and record that for the Monkees?
Well, the censorship thing was real easy because the guys who were in charge of the recording company thing weren't paying too close attention, and the word Seeger didn't actually kick up any kind of a fuss for these guys. Seeger's Theme is actually a piece that he wrote himself called The Theme from the Goofing Off Suite, and then later called Seeger's Theme. And I did it because I loved it and I learned it and play it. And I thought somebody learned a guitar accompaniment for it and played it for me, and suddenly the thing just popped and sizzled and danced like I hadn't believed possible. So I wanted to play it with drums and guitars. And I don't know I don't know which version you heard, but there was one version that was two completely different versions, but spliced with a little meaning end to end, and with just a quick breath in the middle, so the thing ends and you hear me take a breath and then it starts over again. And the two versions are very different, and I can't remember exactly, but Buddy Miles played drums on one of those, and I think played guitar on the other, and I think it was Dewey Martin, the Buffalo Springfield drummer, played on one, and Buddy Miles on the other, and I wanted to do nothing except to hear it pop and sizzle and dance the way I had. And so, to heck with the censorship, they didn't care enough, and it wasn't like I was singing, the Russian Red Army National Anthem or anything like that, which would have been difficult because there's no beat to it. I mean, Russian soul is a whole different kettle of fish, and we're not used to it in this country much.
Speaking of foreign countries, how have you attracted the attention of the Welsh BBC?
How have I attracted the attention of the Welsh BBC?
Are they here filming you?
No.
Oh, okay. That's just...
Should I tell them who you guys are? It's BBC out of Northern Ireland.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, let's do some sorrow there. And yes, they're covering me, and there's going to be Jonesy and Dolans and I are all being pursued and examined under the microscope, and there's going to be a documentary for BBC available next year, and I'll bet you guys know how to get it back across the pond from there. There was another hand up in the back. Yes.
Considering how ephemeral the Monkees was expected to be, what are your feelings about its staying power 2 generations later?
Well, I'm very grateful. obviously, you know, without a certain amount of staying power, 40 years. You guys wouldn't be here. You know, I mean, how many other groups from the 40s would get, I mean, from 40 years ago would get, you know, even as many as the two of you. And so I feel great. The question is how do I feel? And I feel great. But I want to talk about this just a little bit longer, because I'm one of those guys who likes to do that. In the 60s, somewhat like these days, and if I offend anybody politically, vote me out of office. But for my money, in the 60s, I mean, this part won't offend you, but the part about how it's like today is a little bit, well, it's not revolutionary. It's a little controversial, I suppose. The people who were in charge, who were occupying the seats of authority, had blown their moral virtue. The war in Vietnam had no strategic purpose in America, and as far as I'm concerned, what happened was that there was this war that everybody thought was righteous, that was World War II, and then there was a war that most people thought was righteous, and that was Korea. And then the guys, the next generation of political leaders said, I want my war. And they went into Vietnam. Claimed that America's, that if we didn't stop them in Vietnam, they'd be in San Francisco the next day. And nobody stopped to say, Vietnam is going to invade America because we didn't go in there and stop the Vietnamese communists from taking over Vietnam. If we let them take over Vietnam, next thing it's going to be, I mean, who do we think they are? And everybody's thinking, well, we had to stop Hitler. And so, which is a whole other story in and of itself, I'm not going to get into it. But the point being that the guys who were in charge of the war had no business and didn't like what the kids were up to at that time, and the reason was really obvious because the kids could see right through these people and knew that there was nothing going on. And when you have the voice of the establishment, Life magazine, distorting a photo and saying that the distortion was the result of that the mother took LSD, and that's how come this child was distorted, then you know that they are willing to lie to get you to behave the way they want you to behave, having nothing to do with the truth. They don't care whether acid actually broke down chromosomes and caused deformation. They wanted you to stop doing what they were afraid of your doing. And so they made up stories. And you know that when this happens, the voice of the establishment is one thing for some maniac to come at you and scream you're going to die because you haven't accepted Jesus as your personal savior. Little side note, I picked up a kid hitchhiking, looked at me and said, "You saved?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "I didn't see you at my church on Wednesday night." So there's only 6 saved people in the entire cosmos. Okay, so when the voice of the establishment lies to get us to do things, it's obvious that they don't care about us. We're on our own. We can't trust them. We cannot believe what they tell us. And when they tell us what's right and wrong, we can't say a thing. There's a lot of people, especially still on the right, who say, well, look what kind of debauchery and depravity the 60s kids did. And they pick specific examples of acid burnout kids, and presumably there were some, and junkies and people like that. And they point to them and say, that's how bad the 60s were. And what I say is, well, if you don't give us any authority we can trust, we're going to try everything. And some of us are going to go down in flames behind this stuff. Can't be helped. It's what happens when we have to kick back to square one. And we wouldn't have to if you guys were taking care of business, but you're not, so it's up to us. Okay, all of that is background for the fact that in the Monkees TV show, there were no authority figures. There were no senior adults. It was the only TV show of its time to be that way. I mean, the Beatles, on Hard Day's Night, the Beatles had management. They didn't give them much respect, but there was management, and we had no management. we faced the usual array, the usual palette of situation comedy situations, but we had to face it on our own. Up till that time, all the situation comedies had been, My Three Stupid Sons, and Father Knows Best, You Age, and, like that. And Leave It to Beaver, He'll Mess Up. And, that was the whole point of those shows, is, some kid messes up, and then the father comes along and gives some sage advice, and everything straightens out. Well, that was a lot of wishful thinking, and it never happened that way. Almost never anyway. I mean, it was all people, actually, tell you the truth. What I think is that all these World War II vets came back with PTSD, and we're just, everything's going to be all right, everything's all right, everything's all right, everything's all right, everything's all right. And of course, there wasn't any PTSD back then, post-traumatic stress disorder, but, so everything had to be kept rigidly correct, and that's why all those 50s comedies were and we were different, and the world had changed, and we were different. And in fact, there was no situation comedy without an adult figure for another 20 years after that. So I think that's one of the things that happened. The Monkees struck a chord because they resonated at some really important level at the time. It wasn't just, it wasn't just. And we never mentioned it, never came up, never made a point of it. It just was what it was. Very McLuhan-esque. The medium is the message. Okay, thanks for letting me rattle on. Anything else? Yeah.
Out of all the songs that you wrote when you were in the Monkees, which one was your favorite?
Of the songs I wrote when I was in the Monkees, I have to think Can You Dig It? Just off the top of my head. I mean, there were lots of little ones, but that one I thought was the one that oh, wait a minute. The Monkees put out a CD in 77, 74, something like that, 76. And on that, and I wrote 2 songs on that, for that CD. One of them was Run Away from Life that Jonesy sang, and the other was a thing called I Believe You, which was really gloomy, doomy song, but I thought it was a fabulous piece of artwork. So tell me about my time. Can we go on to a board or what? As if we weren't already. Because I see people coming in, I presume they're here for somebody else. I get the feeling that. Okay, a couple more questions.
More questions. Previous to the Monkees, and like a lot of other people I know, in the 60s when they started doing garage bands and that's when you started seeing a lot of kids get together with instruments, forming different bands, which was previous to the British invasion. What bands were you in previous to the Monkees? Or that you got together with childhood friends and tried to do something with?
No, I wasn't a rocker in those days. It was just a folky. As a matter of fact, the only group, I was in a few groups that just came and went like the waves on a swimming pool. But I was in a group for a minute with Steve Stills and a guy named John Hopkins. But that was a kind of a folky group. And as far as the rock thing goes, I think I kind of knew what it was all about pretty quickly. I think I got a pretty good grasp of it right away. But I had never been in a rock group before, the Monkees. That was it. That was my garage band. And you can tell the third CD, Headquarters, it's a garage band. You can hear it. It's really clear. One more. Make it good. Shotty Top Lad.
I was wondering if the other members of the Monkees collaborate with you still on your albums, like if Mickey plays, guitar, sings with you, or Peter
Peter who?
Huh? Produces on the albums. I was wondering.
I put out a solo CD a number of years ago called Stranger Things That Happened on the Beechwood label. And it's available on Beechwood Recordings. And on that CD, Mickey and Mike sang background vocals for me. and I also and I had the most wonderful. I recommend it. I don't know how good it is because of course you lose your objectivity. But on one song, I have Mama Cass's daughter and Papa John Phillips' daughter singing backup vocals. And Mama Cass's daughter sounds just like Mama Cass. It's like having the mamas and the papas in the background. It sounds so good. We just, James, who was co-producing with me, James Lee Stanley, who's the boss of Beechwood, and I would look at each other to hear these two ladies singing, and our jaws dropped. And we melted. It was long after Cass was gone. And we just, and you listen, you can just hear it on that. And there's some wonderful background. It was a great adventure. But, and those guys were willing, Dolans and Ezra. Jones was supposed to be willing too. And he came into the recording studio and started doing bits and jokes and then walked out. Davey, what are you going to, Davey, what, Davey? And so I don't know. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your sitting there and not running out or vomiting. And thank you very much. I got a picture of
If you want to get an autograph, stay in your seats, stay in your